Imagine an entire ship caught not by enemy fire, but by ice. A great wooden hull, squeezed by a silent, crushing wilderness. Men stranded light years from help in a world of white and black water. This is the story of the Endurance and the 28 souls who refused to give up. One man, Ernest Shackleton, led 28 men into a frozen trap. Their ship sank. Their supplies dwindled. Rescue seemed impossible. Yet, against all logic, every single man who started that nightmare lived to see rescue. How? It was 1914, the era of wooden ships and stubborn explorers. Shackleton's plan was to cross the Antarctic, a heroic, nearly suicidal dream. They sailed on the three-masted barkentine Endurance, a beautiful, stout vessel. But the Weddell Sea does not bow to beauty. By early 1915, pack ice had the ship in its jaws. Weeks became months. The ice drifted. The crew watched as their home groaned and cracked. On November 21, 1915, the hull finally gave, and Endurance sank beneath the ice. This was not a random crew. These were men of skill. A photographer who stitched images from misery, a carpenter whose hands would shape fate, a navigator who could read a star in a blackout. Shackleton himself was not the loud conqueror of myths, but a commander who believed the soft steel of leadership could save men where iron could not. He often said, "Optimism is true moral courage," and he would need that courage every single day. When the ship died, the men camped on the ice. They drifted north with the floes until the ice broke under their feet. Then came desperate seamanship, 3 lifeboats packed with men, gear, and the last hope. They fought toward Elephant Island, a bleak, inhospitable spit of rock. Not a place to be rescued, but at least solid ground. They made it. Yet, Elephant Island was no salvation. It was a waiting room for death, except for one impossible idea. Shackleton chose 5 men, including the ship's master, Frank Worsley, and the smallest, most battered boat, the James Caird. What followed is often called the greatest small boat journey ever attempted. They set a course for South Georgia, some 800 miles away through the murderous seas. For 16 harrowing days and nights, they fought waves that wanted to swallow them whole. Ice, spray, freezing hands, navigation by dead reckoning. And yet, against storm after storm, they landed on South Georgia. This feat alone would be legend. What followed would be a masterpiece. But they were stranded on the wrong side of the island. Shackleton, exhausted and battered, organized an overland trek across glaciated mountains with no maps. Imagine sharp ice underfoot, crevasses yawning like mouths, every step a gamble on life. Shackleton led the way. He found help. Then began the rescue missions back to Elephant Island. 3 attempts failed in the fierce seas. Finally, on August 30th, 1916, a Chilean vessel reached Elephant Island and took all the men off. Not a single man had been lost, not one. Survival stories are many, but what sets this apart? The scale of adversity. A full ship crushed months on drifting ice. The logistical impossibility, the James Caird voyage, and the overland crossing were miracles. And above all, leadership. Shackleton's decisions, prioritizing men over glory and keeping morale intact, turned certain catastrophe into survival. In 2022, explorers found the wreck of Endurance deep beneath the Weddell Sea, remarkably preserved. The discovery reminded us that human stories outlive their wood and tar. Why do we tell this story still? Maybe because it shows what real leadership looks like. Maybe because it reveals the strange bargain between courage and humility, that the bravest act can be to save a friend instead of chasing fame. Or maybe we tell it because, in an indifferent universe, a small knot of men clung to each other and triumphed. This is not only history, it's a lesson. When people lead with care, even the direst storms can be weathered. If this moved you, hit like, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Shackleton's boots? For more deep dives into humanity's greatest stories, subscribe and join us next time.